Hi guys, it's Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, in this case showing you the Kershaw Brawler. Before I get started with this, I just wanted to mention that there's been a hacking attack on my website, themodernsurvivalist.com. So if you go there, it's going to be malware alerts. It's getting addressed right now, but just on the meantime, keep in mind that I also keep my other website, which is furfile.blogspot.com. Have the link below there. I've kept it as as a backup, and it's a good thing that I have that plan B. It's a good philosophy in general for gear, for life in general, having more options. So it's the same stuff that you find in themodernsurvivalist.com, you find at furfile.blogspot.com as well. Just keep that in mind in case you want to keep track of what I'm posting. To the review itself of the Kershaw Brawler, it is Speedsafe, which is assisted opening knife. Alright, as you put a bit of pressure on this protruding over here, you have your blade snapping open. You also have the traditional stubs that you see on typical knives, but I don't find that to be as comfortable as opening with just a bit of pressure on the spine of the blade. That's because I'm more used to traditional knives, the traditional folders where you do all the work on your own, like in the typical the Spyderco Enduro or the typical cold steel knives. You are not surprised by that assisted opening. Okay, there's also an issue in the design of the blade where they did leave a bit more space on the right side for right-handed people. Alright, for right-handed guys it's not that big a deal. For left-handed there is not nearly as much space, as you can appreciate yourself. See, there's almost no space there. There is a bit more space for your thumb, for the meaty part of your finger to get in there if you're right-handed, but if you're left-handed, there's not nearly as much. So it's much more simple to just use the blade as is probably intended to be used, which is the Speedsafe mechanism that you see. It is a liner lock, and those liners are quite beefy, maybe one of the thickest ones I've seen in a knife of this size, which is always good. Over design, sturdier designs is always good than anything more flimsy. The blade itself is 3.25 inches long. It is the geometry of the blade is a typical tanto tipped blade, as you can appreciate yourself. Has a bit of a bevel on the other side as well. It is a hollow grind blade, which is okay. The material used is HCR 13 MOV, which is good steel. I've had good experience with that in the Spyderco Resilience and Tenacious. So I appreciate good steel that isn't that expensive. Some people are a bit more steel snobby and think that HCR 13 MOV is a cheaper steel, and but there's nothing wrong with cheap steel if it works well, if it's properly heat treated and it performs. I found it to be easy to sharpen, and it does keep its edge quite well. This is hardened, according to the website, it's hardened to 5860 Rockwell, which is typical to what you find in folding knives. Usually I prefer something a bit softer, but that's just me because I like having less of a problem sharpening knives, and in some steels, because of the added hardness, it takes a bit more time. Since I sharpen my knives myself, and I have no problem with that, I prefer a knife that is easier to sharpen than a knife that is maybe a bit more brittle and harder and may keep the edge a bit longer, but when it comes to sharpening you have to spend a bit more time. Just personal preferences. The coating on the blade is DLC, which feels like Teflon type of finish, which is good. I don't like that eggshell finish or anything that adds resistance, anything that is a bit more rugged and doesn't slide as well through material. I think that it works against the basic purpose of a knife, which is cutting. The handle is FRN, which is a nylon reinforced, fiberglass reinforced nylon. It has a bit of texturing, as you can appreciate. A design of some sort, nothing odd there, nothing strange. The handle, I find it to be a bit small, at least for my hands, and I have, medium to large hands, I suppose. Not a huge paw by any means, but I find it to be a bit smaller than I would have preferred. The clip can go both left and right and tip up, tip down, so you basically have the full options of going anywhere in the four corners of the knife. And you can disassemble this knife as well, as you can appreciate, because of the screws. It comes razor sharp out of the box, which is great. It's a hair popping sharp, just sliding the knife, just the hair just pops out of the way, which it's nice when you buy a knife and it's razor sharp. Sometimes you buy higher end knives and they're not nearly as sharp as these ones, so you kind of appreciate when you buy a $25 to $30 knife, which is the cost of this knife, generally $25 to $30 depending on where you're buying it. I find the tanto tip to be good for its intended purpose. Why do you get a tanto tip blade? Because you want a stronger tip. Some people don't like it that much. I have no problem with it. I admit that it is a bit harder to sharpen if you're not that experienced than traditional blades. For example, a typical clip point like the Cold Steel Voyager, which is the one you're seeing right now. But on the other side, you have a good strong tip, and especially if you're going to be using this knife, in case you ever have to use it for defensive purposes, the added advantage of a tip like this one, the tanto tip, what it does is create a wider wound channel closer to the tip, which is a deeper and wider wound channel, right? If you compare it, for example, to a clip point, you see the difference. We're talking about a much larger blade, and you basically have well, in this case it's not that much of a difference, but comparing it to a similar size blade, for example, this is the Leatherman Charge. Generally speaking, you will find that clip points aren't as wide on the tip as tanto points, basically because of a obvious design and obvious geometry of a blade. You're going to be creating a wider and deeper wound, basically just because of the geometry of the blade. Alright, and again, it has that added resistance and toughness for stabbing, for prying, for anything that's going to be abusing the tip a bit more. Tanto tips are of course stronger in that way. Now the Speedsafe, it is very fast, and it is I suppose that it works better for people that aren't that used to traditional opening mechanisms, with a hole on the stub. For people that aren't that used to that, you do get quite fast opening, of course, because of that assistance. If you're more used to traditional methods, you may have to put some time into getting used to it. So, just something to keep in mind. One of the things that I don't like about this knife is that they kind of messed up here with the finger guard and the flip. You see that finger guard protrudes on the other side of the handle, right? And that's what's giving you the flip mechanism. Now, when you hold this knife as you're supposed to, you find that it kind of buries. It's burying in your finger. It's not nearly as comfortable as other designs. That's basically because you see that, you appreciate that, how the angle breaks there. It's not organic by any means. This is basically because of a design flaw. It has nothing to do with the knife being made in China. It's that when someone was designing this blade in CAD on the computer, they just didn't keep this in mind. All right, they didn't think that it would be that much of a deal, and it actually is. It's because it's kind of uncomfortable, especially when you consider that you do have a bit of rougher edges here. So if you're going to be doing any significant amount of work, you're going to be noticing that rather fast. In comparison, how it should have been done properly, you can see here in this other knife, the Boker. You see how it's more organic, and the curve is much nicer, not as steep. You don't have that angle, just a continuous curve, right? This is done properly. This, not so much. Kinds of buries and it bites into your finger. One other thing that they did keep in mind to have this piece on the back strap. Now, it would have been better to move it up closer to the joint between the handle and the blade. Why is that? Because when you open this knife, because of the sharper edges that you find in general all over the knife, it's not, you know, again, $25–30 knife, guys. You cannot ask for much. But since they had this piece here, they could have moved it a bit closer to the top, and in that way avoid this happening to you, which is you put some strength, you put some tension to the blade so as to flip it open, and you end up having your thumb slide in this sharper edge over here. If they had moved it a bit closer to the top, they could have avoided that. And you see where it comes out. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, you see, they could have moved it up to here, right? They move this plastic piece up to here, and they avoid that happening. So when you open it, you just push it, and then here it gets caught by this strap, and you don't sink you don't bury your finger here in this sharper edge by accident or by continuous of motion. Just a few things of the design that haven't been worked out as well. For people with smaller hands, if I have medium to large hands, depending on what I'm using, gloves and such, medium to large would be what I end up using. For smaller hands, it may not be as uncomfortable. I had my wife check it out herself, and she found it to be not that much of a problem because it's the angle doesn't bother her nearly as much as it does me. So just a few things to keep in mind. In general, it's an okay knife. I still think that there's better options out there. It's kind of a pity because they could have improved some of those little things and maybe get rid of the sharper edges here and there. There's things, for example, here adding this textured end here. I don't know exactly what purpose it fulfills. I would have preferred to put some of that over here and get rid of those sharper edges on the side on the meantime. Again, small little things that could have been done to improve the general design of this knife. So folks, that's basically it. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you like them, consider subscribing. I keep getting tons of subscribers every day. People are obviously liking what's going on here, so if you're one of them as well, keep that in mind. And more stuff to come. If you have any other video recommendations, anything that you would like me to cover or talk about in this videos, I'm doing this for you guys. Just keep that in mind. Leave a comment and tell me, Fernando, I'd like you to talk about this or that. It's gonna be covered eventually. Alright, so take care folks. See you next time. Bye bye.